Then we'll get going.
I am back.
Just in time for the live stream.
Perfect.
And fantastic. Welcome, all you awesome people, for coming to Reclaiming Your Energy, the Power of Sleep, Stress Management, and Stamina Building. I'm Esther Sarlo, the founder and CEO of Mind Myself, and it is my pleasure to bring to you some amazing practitioners and some fantastic content today. We're so thrilled that you joined us. I'm going to tell you briefly a few housekeeping things, but before we get to that, the vision of Mind Myself is cultivating unity in a time of divisiveness, as well as to help you feel seen and heard and supported on your health journey as you become your own best health advocate. And congratulations on prioritizing your own health. Not everybody does. And we think we know a lot, and we do. We know a lot, but do we really know? So congratulations for being here. We're so thrilled that you're with us. And I want to acknowledge the land I'm on. We all come from different regions and areas, and the land that I am privileged to live and work on includes the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Kakit, Tsawwassen First Nations, also known as Surrey, BC. And we could not do a health event without a disclaimer, so I'm going to read right through it really fast. All the information and advice from Mind Myself and the practitioners is for general education purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The information here and on the Mind Myself website should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat medical conditions. We always recommend that you consult with a doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner for individualized medical advice on specific medical issues. That's really important, even though I flew through it. Today, we're going to start by talking about sleep, and I'm going to read you a quote from Arianna Huffington. Sleep is a non-negotiable. It is the foundation of our health, and without it, we cannot flourish. Our practitioners are going to be talking about this today. And before I introduce our three awesome practitioners, I just want to give a quick shout out to two other practitioners that I just met this week. One is Hilary Samuel, and she works specifically with sleep, and Dr. Anita Tanna. She's a naturopathic doctor and functional medicine person. So welcome to this community and collective and event. And feel free to jump in on the chat. We welcome your input as well. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our three amazing panelists today. We have Haley Clark, Darren McGonigal, and MJ Shar. And they're going to each introduce themselves for about 30 seconds and tell you what their background is, what their credentials are, and what they're passionate about. So let's start with Darren.
Hey, thank you, Esther, so much for organizing this event. This is super exciting. Talking about sleep, stamina, stress. These are massive factors in health and trying to deal with really the chronic epidemic of health problems that we're dealing with. So my background is as an athletic therapist, an osteopathic practitioner, and a strength and conditioning coach. My practice is called Reconditioning Hub. I help anywhere from high performance athletes to weekend warriors to people just struggling with chronic health problems or movement issues. So I take a very kind of zoomed out approach to health, and then I zoom in to help people find solutions to what I would call their performance decrement or performance issues.
Thank you, Darren. MJ, over to you.
Hi, everybody. I want to echo Esther's comment about thank you for taking the time for your health. We need more people who do so in this world so we can influence one another in a positive way. And my background is positive psychology, so how to master the mind, and I apply it to how to master the body. I used to be more of a stage presenter, more of a live speaker. Now I'm transitioning to becoming a YouTuber. So hopefully you find me on YouTube after this event, and thank you again for being here.
Thanks, MJ. Haley, bring us home.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here with all of you. And thank you, Esther, for bringing us all together. This is so important. I have an energy healing practice called Full Circle Bodyworks in beautiful Victoria, BC, where I share intuitive healing sessions, group intuitive healing sessions, Reiki and Reiki classes, including meditation groups. And the focus is to help people and facilitate their own innate healing wisdom through their unconscious, through their nervous system, to help clear out stressors, intention, blocks, beliefs, to create that space for them to connect with what's really in alignment with their heart, and really create space for the healing the body needs, so that we're able to do things like sleep and move and feel good and happy and see the joy in our lives.
Thank you, Haley. And to kick us off into some of the questions, Dr. Mark Hyman says, sleep is the Swiss Army knife of health, more powerful than diet and exercise combined. So I love that quote. There you go.
I'm reading it right now.
Awesome. And I didn't even know that you were doing that. So the first question we want to address is why are there so many issues with sleep these days? We're hearing about it all over the place. Just why are so many issues happening? MJ, do you want to start us off?
Sure, and there are 100 different reasons, so I'll try and not list them all and bore you with too much on that. But I think there's two really big drivers. Number one is we are on our screens so much. The pull of social media, the pull of the next TV show, the pull of what's going on in the news keeps our eyes flooded with light, and as a result, we can't produce the melatonin that we need to induce sleep. Number two, we are busy. We want to get one more thing done for the day. We're trying to send that last email. We just received an email and we're curious to know what's it going to be about, or what's the decision, or whatever that the case may be. And so because of that constant buzzing in our heads with all of those goals we're trying to accomplish, the work never ends. It can happen at any time of day or night nowadays. We don't shut down, and we think that we're going to be better off doing one more little thing to get it off the to-do list for tomorrow, instead of realizing that we're going to be better off if we actually sleep.
Fantastic. Haley, how would you respond to this?
Sure. It's what MJ said. There's so many different things, everything ranging from illness. We touched on earlier, pain, aches and pains that wake us up through the night. I feel like often sleep things are inherited. Hormones play a huge role at certain points in our lives, daily stresses. And I think energy-wise, everything's been heightened over the last few years. It's kind of like when you walk in a room, you can feel a room. And right now, with the world, with so many things going on, there's this heightened energy everywhere. So I feel like there's a part of it where coming back within ourselves and finding that calm and peace is so important, and it's a little more challenging to do right now.
Excellent. And Darren, just before you answer that, maybe add to yours, what is a good night's sleep and how can you tell?
Yeah, so I'll start with that. I think most of us have some level of intuition on when we have a good night's sleep. Like you wake up the next day and you either feel like you have energy or you don't, like that grogginess, that brain fog. But I think a lot of people are moving towards, and I'm including myself in this, is having some sort of wearable technology to help track and identify, because some of us don't have that self-awareness. It's like you've been in this fight or flight response for so long that you can't even tell that you're exhausted, you're fatigued, you're just burning the candle at both ends. And so having some data, using a wearable to give that information, there's lots of really good products out there, from Oura Ring to BioStrap to Whoop Strap. So I think all of those things can help us really start to track and identify what is a good night's sleep, and then start to implement some strategies to change it. As far as I'll echo what MJ said. I think and Haley, I think the advent of some technology, i.e. Electricity, I think it starts with the light bulb, and how we've manipulated our normal circadian rhythm has definitely affected in the last 100 years how we prepare ourselves for sleep and how our hormones are regulated for sleep.
Absolutely. Haley, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I think you covered that really well.
Okay.
Thanks, Darren.
So I'll ask the next question. And MJ, why can falling asleep be so hard? And feel free to add anything to the other questions so far.
We are a go, go, go type of society. We value getting to everything we want. And then if there's a mini pause somewhere in our day, oh gosh, we got to fill it with something, right? We got to go post something on LinkedIn. We got to go respond to a few of the posts that have happened on Facebook. So because we never take those mini pauses that are, well, I say never, not enough, that are kind of built in to our days, our body gets used to functioning on overdrive. And as a result, it doesn't get as efficient or as good at doing the opposite, which is pausing, slowing down, getting more centered, like Haley was saying earlier. So the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system can't be kicked in at the same time. They function like the brake pedal and the gas pedal on our cars, and we're on the gas all day, and therefore the brake pedal becomes kind of resistant. When you try and press it, it's as if it's pressing against you. And that's the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest or digest system in our body. So it's just not efficient at kicking in anymore because we don't use the little mini chances that we have throughout the day, never mind carving a real big pause for it. So we need to relearn to activate it more intentionally and more often in order for it to also work well for us at night.
Anything to add on that, Haley?
Yeah, sort of in alignment with that, giving ourselves that time to unwind, expecting ourselves to go right to the 9th hour or midnight, and then expect to just kind of hit the pillow and be out for the night is kind of setting a high standard. And so allowing ourselves that space to ease in, allowing our nervous system to unwind and go into that parasympathetic state is hugely helpful in that falling asleep process.
Fantastic. Darren, do you have anything to add, or shall I move on to the next question?
I think that's a fantastic point, like giving time to ease. Like I've heard it put that sleep is like landing a large aircraft. You can't just put it down the moment you hit your head on the pillow. There's a process that goes into getting your body prepared to sleep. And believe it or not, that process starts the moment you wake up.
So you're starting to sleep right when you wake up. That's interesting.
The things you do first thing in the morning will dictate how you go to sleep at night, because that's the very start of your circadian rhythm.
Wow. It's kind of like the metaphor. We're living, but every heartbeat gets us one step closer to dying, but it's the journey in between that's so important. So, wow, I never thought about it like that before. That's amazing. And Darren, if you could carry on with this, why do some people fall asleep really easily, but then wake up really early or wake up multiple times?
Yeah, so we're talking about different sleep disorders, which there's, I think, over 100 different kinds of sleep disorders, but some of the common ones are insomnia. And even within insomnia, there's multiple different kinds of insomnia. Sleep apnea would be another sleep disorder. So these are questions that we kind of have to ask somebody. What is your sleep routine? When was your last meal? Are you looking at screens before you go to bed? What's stress like? So if you look at even Chinese medicine, they start talking about the times different organs are more active in the evening or overnight. So, people that wake up at 1 to 3, we think about the liver, right? So the liver could be a factor. It's being overactive, it's working, or, you're waking up and you ate past 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, and now your digestive system is really overactive and you wake up and you can't go back to sleep. Or you drink too late at night, right? Alcohol is a factor. Just regular fluid, you got to get up and go to the bathroom. So when we're talking to somebody about these waking up in the middle of the night factors, we really got to ask a few more questions around, lifestyle and things that may be predisposing them to waking up at that time. But that's just a a real preliminary precursor of all the things that we got to kind of examine to figure out, why are you waking up multiple times a night, or you wake up, it's always 3 o'clock in the morning when you look at your clock.
MJ, over to you. Any comments?
Yeah, I like what Darren said. He covered it well. But if I were to add one thing, it's that sometimes we reach sleep and we get there, even though we're worried about things, even though we're still trying to process things. Our bodies are just so exhausted that we will fall asleep. But then it is our worries that will wake us up, or we will go to the bathroom. And then it's because of those worries that we can't return to sleep more gracefully. And so my little tip for that, to address that specifically, is to have a worry pad by your bed. And sometimes we're like, oh, I don't want to forget that idea. I don't want to forget I have to do this thing first thing in the morning or whatever. Put it on your worry pad. And then you know that you'll find that thought again tomorrow morning. So you don't have to hang on to it all night long. And because it's right there, it can be out of your head. You can find it again in the morning. And hopefully that helps you just a little bit.
I love it. And you could also reframe that to be your peace and rest pad instead of
Oh, I
your
like that
worry
better.
pad.
Yes.
Pick another nut, calm.
Very true.
Haley, do you have anything about why people wake up early or have trouble waking up in the night?
Absolutely. And I love the list, MJ. It's so true. And, you know, keeping in mind too, that works really well for kids. You know, children as well, maybe waking up in the middle of the night and waking us up. And they have busy minds as well. And so I used to do that with my son. I'd write down what was coming up if he couldn't sleep, and we'd write a list for him, and he'd be out like a light after that. Which, yeah, so it was a wonderful tip. And
Well, thank you. My son has a hard time sleeping, so I'll try that.
yes.
Funny, I never thought of it for him. Thank you.
These things apply to teenagers and kids too, not just us.
Everybody. And also, I guess, touching in on the processing piece. You know, we do have busy minds and expecting to shut down. And sometimes we'll be so white by the end of the day, our heads will hit the pillow, we crash, and then wake up at 2 a.m. with these thoughts. And I feel like a lot of it's because during the day, we don't have time to process what's actually happening for us. I mean, how many of you wake up in the middle of the night and you don't even know why? You know, you kind of go, well, my life is good, or I've addressed this or this, and there's just so many different things. So again, that circadian rhythm, as Darren mentioned, I feel like as much as we're speaking about that 8 hours of sleep hygiene and good sleep, what about just focusing on the entire 24 hours? Why can't it all be good? You know, and taking that little bit of space to process what's actually happening for us during the day and earlier in the evening before we go to bed. Then we can kind of put our hearts and our minds at ease.
Thank you. Why do we resist sleep? I know as a kid, I used to not want to go to bed because I didn't want to miss anything. But as adults, I know that there are lots of people who resist sleep. Anybody have a comment?
FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Yeah.
So it's the same. There's nothing new, just the same as when kids. Wow. Anything to add on that, Haley? I think I have a sense you want to say something.
Yeah, actually I do. You know, this kind of popped into my mind earlier this morning. There's this part I thought, well, you know, probably all of you go, well, I'm not resisting sleep. Like, that's why I'm here, is to learn how I can sleep better and improve my sleep. But I don't know about any of you, but I know for myself, I know that there are certain things I can do to improve my sleep that will help me to sleep through the night, or at least have a more restful evening. Yet, you know, go to bed at 9 o'clock, for example, shut down all of my devices by 8 and read my book. Yet it will be 11:30 and I'm finishing off that last email and sending it off. So there's this part that goes, well, I'm saying that I want better sleep, yet my actions are completely different. And so, you know, if you're finding you're doing that often, checking in and asking yourself, why are you choosing these other things over that restful sleep and rejuvenation that you so need? So perhaps starting there. will help to create some space for you to make those choices that are really healthy for you.
I love it. And we'll get into some solutions more toward the end of our talk too. Darren, I know that you had mentioned some of the sleep conditions. Do you want to take a little moment and talk about the difference between insomnia, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, and maybe night sweats? Just give us a quick rundown of what those are.
Oh, that's a deep one. Insomnia, there's multiple different kinds. So this is basically just waking up at different points in the middle of the night and having a hard time getting back to sleep. Sleep apnea usually has to do with breathing. There's some sort of difficulty breathing and you wake yourself up. So why that breathing problem is there's anything from, jaw alignment issues, to, grinding dental stuff. There's all sorts of different factors in sleep apnea. Restless leg, again, multiple different kinds of restless leg, but this is movement at sleep, can be related to stress, can be, there can be neurological sort of reasons behind restless leg. So that's that's my 30-second overview of all of those. We could have a whole podcast on one of those. So
thank you for that. Haley, do you have anything to add on those?
No, like Darren said, I feel like there's such a long list. And again, it's knowing what those different pieces are and educating yourself, being your own advocate for what is going to help and support you with the different pieces that you are living with.
From a positive psychology perspective, MJ, you want to weigh in on any of those?
Positive psychology studies what makes us flourish. We don't study the diseases. So I'm sorry, I'm over my head on this. And
no problem. It's all good.
In the chat. Maybe Hillary can help us out.
Yeah, maybe Hillary or Anita might want to put a comment in too. But we'll leave that there. But if you think, I'll come back to you in a second, MJ. If you think you have an issue, that's a perfect time to talk to somebody about it and get an assessment. And find out what's really going on. If it's just stress, which we're coming up to next, or if there's something you really need to deal with physiologically. MJ, go ahead.
I want to comment on what Tony posted in the chat. She says, ironically, it's to have more time to wind down that I sometimes resist sleep. And I can totally relate with you because it's often when I am most tired that I go to bed the latest. And what I want to say about that is that we need to learn delayed gratification. We're so used to the immediate gratification in this life that we live. And so we're tired. And because we're tired, the day hasn't gone great. It wasn't our best day, right? We've had to fight the fogginess and the irritability or the sadness or whatever was coming up for us because of that tiredness. And so we're looking for that moment at night where we can have a little bit of fun, a little bit of pleasure, and we want it now. But if we can focus on delayed gratification and just go to bed, tomorrow will be much better as a result. And I find that a lot of our habits in life are impeded. We're not doing the best we can because we're looking for that immediate gratification. And as I'm saying all this, I realize I need to go study how to build that. We need to learn about that.
Right. Well, that's a good segue into stress too. If we're always amped up, and I see that Tony had, my days are pretty passionate, so I'm amped up often, she said. We have so many factors coming in at us and things that we choose to participate in, some things that we have to do that we'd rather not. Let's talk about good stress versus bad stress and how they impact our sleep and our stamina. Haley, do you want to start us off?
Well, both good stress and bad stress impacts us for sure. I'll go with the good stress because people often, I hear this a lot, well, everything's okay. This is good and this is good. And the other 50 things that I'm taking care of on my list are all good things. But it's just so much, it's still a lot to process. And so at night, when we're sleeping is often when the unconscious really kicks into gear, and we may dream. That may be one way of processing. We'll have all of these weird and wonderful, vivid dreams. And that plays a role. And so our sleep isn't as restful as it could be. And again, taking that extra time to go through and come to peace with each of these good stressors that are happening as well, and calming yourself, taking that space in the evening. If you've had a really successful day and things are really going your way and you feel just so lit up, which is amazing, you still need that time to unwind and calm your nervous system and come down into that centered space.
Fantastic. Darren, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we underestimate how resilient we are as human beings. And so when we talk about sleep and stress, we're not necessarily saying like, hey, like you can't have a bad night's sleep, right? Like everybody's going to have a bad night's sleep, and it may occur from good stressors. You may go and exercise really hard late at night, and in theory that exercise was a good stressor, maybe timed inappropriately, but it was a good stressor, and now you're up all night. And so that isn't going to kill you, right? Like, don't freak out. What we want to look at is the chronic problem, right? Like 6+ months, 8+ months of sleep disturbances, of these heart palpitations or anxiety that you don't know where it's coming from. These are the things you kind of want to hone in on. But training the stress, like the way we get stronger is introducing stress to the system, right? Whether that's through exercise, mental training, so you want to make your system, you want to drive your system down into the ground every now and then, but you want to build space for recovery. And so I think, good stress, bad stress, I think there's some things that can be both good and bad stress. It just depends on the circumstance and the timing. And so really starting to learn as an individual what that is and what those triggers are for you, and when you need that good stress and when you need a little bit of that bad stress, right? Like sometimes hey, I just need to let loose a little bit. And I like MJ's point, like, hey, delayed gratification, that's key. But sometimes you got to reward yourself down the road. It's like, hey, like I'm going to have that extra chocolate cake in 3 months if I do this, this, and this. And that's okay. Like giving a little bit of space for yourself.
I love it. And just before you comment, MJ, because I'm going to ask you a different question, there is a lot of great stuff going on in the chat. If you haven't been paying attention, there's some great stuff there. So have a look.
Yes.
And so MJ,
yes. Go ahead.
The sleep and stress issues for women versus men. And we're talking about good stress, bad stress, but is it different for men, for women, from your perspective?
Man, I was so prepared for your last question. Now you're taking me back.
Well, go say whatever you want to say.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to oversimplify the good and the bad stress, and I'm sure there could be a lot of debate, but just to try and help us center our minds a little bit around those topics, I think that the good stresses tend to be more short-term, and they are accompanied by a sense of hope. Like the stress I might feel before I hop on a stage, or the stress I might feel before I watch my son go do the talent show. Whereas the bad stresses tend to be more long-term, like the nagging, never-ending to-do lists, or having to work with that toxic boss. And so they are also accompanied by a sense of powerlessness. Now, men versus women, stress tends to, actually, I'm not going to say that because I'm not positive about it. So the men versus women thing, I will have to admit, I have never looked into it too deeply, and I'm hoping that another one of my colleagues has more to say about it.
Okay, well, what's your gut feeling if there is a difference? You don't have to have the definitive answer. We're not going to test you or certify you. What's your opinion?
All right, my opinion, my educated opinion, it's still just an opinion, is that the women tend to have a little bit more of that bad stress than the men, because we tend to think things through and plan and overanalyze more often. Guys can shrug things off a little bit more easily. I don't know if it's cultural or if it's hormonal, but I think that women tend to suffer a little bit more from the stress issues than the men do.
Thank you for your opinion. That's a very excellent opinion. I appreciate it. Haley, do you want to weigh in here? Darren, I want to get to you too, but let's hear what Haley has to say.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not super educated on the difference between the two either, and I don't want to generalize, but I will share something that a man said to me years ago, and I remember actually really recognizing this, is that a lot of men have what he called a nothing box, where they can just shut it off. And so I feel like the access to this nothing box can be hugely helpful in the realm of sleep, and being able to just completely like conk out, whether it's napping or in the evening. That's the number one I have to say about that. And of course, the other piece with women, and I'm not sure how this affects men, but with women with perimenopause and menopause is another additional piece that of course affects a women's sleep on other completely different levels.
Absolutely. And we did a bit of talking about that in our first 2 episodes of What the Hormone is Happening to Me podcast with practitioners. So you can go and have a look at some of that too, if you're interested in taking that down a different pathway too. Darren, I know you have something to say on this.
Well, since I'm the only dude on the panel here,
Yay, thank you.
I'll give you my perspective working with women and my wife. Hormones definitely play a role. Like you have the cycle that women go through, and this definitely affects what they perceive, their stressors, their sleep. So you have kind of their monthly cycle, but you also have things like menopause later in life. All of these things kind of affect, but also how the female brain thinks a little bit. And that, referring to that nothing box, I can give you kind of a personal example. This is not recommended by any stretch, but for me, I was having some sleep issues a few years ago, and I found watching Yellowstone before I went to bed helped me like crazy, right? Like this is like, I would never say to somebody, hey, go watch Yellowstone before you're going to bed, and this is going to be a great idea. But for me, it helped me go into the nothing box. And the more violent it was, the better. I slept like a rock. My wife was like, I can't take this show. Like I am stressed out of my mind. And I'm like, this is awesome. I'm sleeping. So everybody's different, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's even more differences between genders on that level.
I love that. I can't, if I watch Yellowstone all the way up until I go to bed, I don't go into the nothing box. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
And not plugging it, but it's an amazingly well-written show. And if somebody doesn't identify as either a man or a woman, then I'm sure that there are lots of other stressors that would contribute to this too. And I don't have any information on that in this context. So the impact of family and work drama, because most of us have some at some point or another, or we can understand what that would be like. How does that fit into this conversation? MJ.
I'm sorry. My husband just walked in and he's super loud, and I had texted him.
No problem. The question was,
and now he's here. He's trying to talk to me, so I was texting him.
No problem. So we'll come back to you. So Haley, family and work drama. How does that impact all of this?
Oh, well, I think we can all connect with that on some level. Of course, it has a huge role in busy mind, or how it affects us on an unconscious level. Often with family and relationships, they also hit our deepest underlying triggers. So it can bring up all sorts of emotions that will keep us up at night, anxiety or stresses. And not to mention, I think with family and with work and anything that involves other people, we also, outside of what's actually happening, we create all of these different stories about the event and what's going to happen or might happen or could happen. And so we really get the wheels turning. That, of course, takes us into that fight or flight, and affects us not only through the day, but also carries on through the night. So
thank you. Thank you, Darren.
Well, I think family is a massive factor in just our ability to feel like we have a tribe and having social connection that starts with family. So I'll kind of take a different spin on it and say, hey, like you have that family environment and that's in a good place. That's going to help your sleep. That's going to help like that safe place where you come home and like you can say what you can say whatever you want and you're not feeling judged or ashamed for what you're feeling. And so I think family plays a huge role. Now, on the other end, if you come home and you got family issues, it's going to have the opposite effect, obviously. Work stress, I think we all know this, right? It brings a big component back into the household. You come home, you didn't disconnect from work, you walk in the door and the kids jump on you and like you're reamped, right? And then the wife or the husband has come home, similar situation. This is a bigger kind of philosophical question as to our work-life balance and how are we managing this. And I think through COVID and some of these different things we've gone through in the last few years, more people are having those questions of like, what is work-life balance?
Right. And is it even possible? And what does it actually mean? MJ, are you back with us?
I'm back. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no problem. Carry on. These things happen. This is life.
Yes, that's how it happens. I think that we are learning more and more how everything affects everything else in life, in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our bodies. I showed the book earlier. I'm reading Dr. Mark Hyman right now, and I've just learned about the exposome. The exposome is all the things that we are exposed to and how they influence which genes are going to be expressed or repressed. And it doesn't only stop at what you are going through today. It is also including what happened to your mom while you were in utero, and possibly even what happened to your ancestors. All of that is kind of information that's encoded into our cells. So feeling positive, feeling hopeful, feeling grateful is a lot more important than we once thought, because it's not just about how you feel in the moment and how you might feel tomorrow. It's what information your every cell is encoding. And so to get back to your question about family or the work environment and all of that, they're influencing us more than we realize. And so we have to figure out ways to feel good about those influences, or to take strong action, because the influences aren't going to go away. They're actually being encoded in who you are and how your body reacts to everything. So we need to figure out ways to feel good about it, or to take strong action so that we can then feel good if it's something that we can impact. Now, the second part that comes with that is, having said all this, we don't want us to start freaking out about it, like, oh, I have this difficult person in my life and I don't know how to manage my relationship with her, and now it's going to get encoded in my genes. And like, we don't want to turn that into bad self-fulfilling prophecies. Maybe we need to go for the little hopes if the big hopes are hard to achieve. And then we can feel empowered by having made, maybe having had one helpful conversation, having established some boundaries that we can both agree on, and focus on that part of the relationship as opposed to everything else.
I love it.
Right? Big answer.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's fantastic. And we've all been sitting for about an hour or so. So let's just take a stretch break. You can stand up if you want, but do what you need to do. Generate some energy, because body, mind, spirit. Yes, we're talking, but let's actually take a break here for stretching. Whatever feels good in your body. Oh. And if you want to stand up or get some energy in your chair, that's good too. Sometimes shaking it out can be a really good thing too. Yeah, squats. Awesome. All right. Thank you. So we haven't.
Go ahead. Maybe I didn't pronounce well. It's exposome.
Oh, exposome.
Yeah.
I like exposone too. I like it, but
It's, it would make more sense if they had called it that.
exposome. Because we're in a zone of being exposed all the time, but I love it. So both are really good. Thank you for that. So we haven't talked about exhaustion and burnout really. And we're leading into the final portion of our discussion about stamina. So Darren, can you kick us off? Talk about a little bit about exhaustion and burnout and how that affects our stamina. I know you've worked with elite athletes for years. So bring it on.
Yeah. So, I mean, exhaustion and burnout can happen on many different levels, right? But it's going to affect everything. So you have mental exhaustion where like, hey, you're executive work and you really don't exercise at all, but you're coming home exhausted, right? On the other end, you have elite level athlete who's, going 6 days a week. They got games, training, practice, and they burn out. Now they become more susceptible to injuries. Things start to break down. The immune system starts to break down. They get sick. They have, flu. They start to have all these systems. So systems start to break down when you're chronically fatigued or chronically exhausted. The question, is how do we break that cycle? In the athletic realm, it's sometimes easier. You're usually dealing with younger, healthy individuals who control their schedule for the most part. And, they have the resources to deal with it. So it's often a little bit easier. You deal in the realm of, non-athlete population, this becomes much more challenging. They have, more financial stresses, more perhaps work-related stresses. And so it's like, well, how do we deal with this? And so I tend to zoom out. This is where I go, okay, where are the lowest hanging fruit that we can address? And I think of pillars as, pillars of health. And we talk about nutrition, movement, sleep, and stress. We need to dial in those areas and look at each one and go, where is there a breakdown and what is the kind of the lowest hanging fruit? For example, most people don't hydrate enough. It's simple. They just don't get enough water or electrolyte mix. Yeah, there you go.
Let's all take a sip right now. We stretch. So I'll take a sip of your water or whatever. This is a vitamin C.
Detox tea.
Thank you.
Nice.
Awesome. Carry on.
Right. So simple thing to say, hey, in the morning, get 10 ounces of water with a squeeze of lemon, sea salt, and maybe a little honey. Do that before you grab your coffee. Right. And most people are like, okay, I can do that. Right. So, that takes care of something in the nutrition box. And then in movement, we go, okay, well, if you're tracking steps, people are like, oh man, I get 3,000 steps a day. Like 3,000 steps a day, you are barely functioning. You're barely moving. And this is very common for your everyday desk worker. Like it's atrocious. And so we say, okay, well, can we build in more steps during the day? When you go to the office, can you take the stairs? Is it possible to rearrange your workstation so we put a walking treadmill? So I've had a client that like literally was 2,000 steps a day, chronic back pain. And it wasn't the only, but the major change we made was a standing desk and a walking treadmill, and her pain reduced by at least, subjectively 80% just with that. Right. So, where's the lowest hanging fruit? Right. Sleep, we're not going to belabor that point, but, things like sleep hygiene, we talk about, can you get a pair of blue light glasses? Can you limit when you're on your screen at night? There you go. Right. Because we know the blue light from cell phones is melatonin destroying, right? So you're going to affect sleep if you're on a screen all day, and especially in those evening hours, you're just ramping up your system. So I take that very zoomed out approach and go, where's the lowest hanging fruit to help this? We'll call it the canary in the coal mine of like exhaustion, burnout. It's like, why is there exhaustion and burnout? And so you got to kind of dig a little deeper and then try to find the lowest hanging fruit.
Thank you. Now, MJ, I know you're chomping at the bit to get in on this.
Yes.
I know, I can feel it. I'm just getting to know you. I can feel that energy. Go.
This is my favorite part of this webinar. I mean, so now I'm going to show you guys my book, and it is called Smarts and Stamina, and it is about sleep, food, mood, and exercise. Now, if I were to rewrite the book, I wrote it in 2011. If I were to rewrite this book, there would be a fifth pillar, which is community. But let's talk about sleep, food, mood, and exercise. The 4 groups of habits interact with each other, not only because they change how we feel subjectively, but because they change how we function objectively. When we sleep more or less, when we eat better or worse, when we exercise or not, we are changing our biochemical activity. And that changed biochemical activity makes the next healthy behavior either more or less likely. So just to make that simpler, the better you sleep, the better your chances at eating well, being perky, and exercising. The better you exercise, the greater your chances of sleeping well, feeling good, eating clean. The better you eat, the better your chances of eating well, exercising a lot, feeling good, right? The 4 are super interrelated. And so coming from the field of positive psychology, I like your approach, Darren, but I'm going to suggest something a little bit different. I'm going to say whichever one of these 4 groups of habits is your most difficult one. If it is your challenge, then it's not your solution. Work on something else. Work on something that will be easier for you. And maybe we agree on that, Darren, that it is the lowest hanging fruit, right? Work on something that will be easier for you. And then once you see that progress, because nobody's perfect on all of those 4, right? Once you feel that progress, emotionally, you're going to be strengthened from your initial victories. And that's going to be quite a refreshing change, because let's say food is your biggest issue. You've probably had a lifetime of past failed attempts at changing your food habits. So now if you decide to tackle sleep first, you don't have that defeat in you before you even start. And you can make progress more easily because you don't have that defeat in you before you even start. And as you make that change, your body's going to thank you for it. And it's going to get reprogrammed in a way that will make food easier to tackle a little bit later. So that's my whole system. Sleep, food, mood, and exercise interact. Identify which one you are feeling most ready to work on right now, even if it's not your biggest challenge. Actually, especially if it's not your biggest challenge. If you feel motivated and capable, it will make the other 3 categories easier once you get to them.
I love it. 2 fantastic points of view. Haley, love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. I love that, MJ. Just that kind of covers everybody, and I guess we've talked about younger people and athletes and those in the workplace, but just touching in on, they often say, stamina declines with age, and that this plays a role as well. And I see a lot of people after retirement going, I'm finally retired and I can't do anything. And I've also seen so many people literally get younger with age. It is entirely possible to have your stamina improve and to feel better. And it actually, so just not always believing what they say. Things actually can get better as you age, and taking into account practices like MJ suggested, taking care of your physical body, taking care of your mind, treating yourself well, taking yourself out for walks, drinking more water, changing your diet can be helpful at any age. I mean, I have some of the most inspiring clients that are 80 and can walk further than I can, or are still, playing hockey with all the younger guys. And it's just what I aspire to be.
That's awesome. I love it. Play hockey with the younger guys. I loved your point about aging too. That's who I'm addressing here, is women who are realizing they're aging and going, I don't have to be weighed down by the weight of aging. I I can have energy, I can flourish, I can be healthy, I can be vibrant, I can be passionate, I can do the things I need to do with my body, mind, and spirit.
And it's okay to have a few lines on your face.
Yes, it's okay. We have them, we celebrate. There you go. I love it. So, as we wrap this part of the discussion up and then open it for Q&A, what are some things we can do specifically, like as we leave people with this portion of the conversation? What are your recommendations? What can we do to build stamina? MJ.
So much. I mean, I don't want to plug my book, but if you decided you wanted to start with sleep, there's 10 avenues for sleep. If you decided you wanted to start with exercise, there's 10 avenues to exercise, and so on. I think for those who say all of that, MJ, is difficult for me right now. Sleep, food, mood, and exercise, I feel defeated. I don't know where to begin. Then my number one recommendation would be choose between these two. Either sleep, if you feel like you are capable of it. But if, as Hillary has pointed out earlier, you have unlearned sleep and you are, maybe filled with insomnia or restless leg syndrome or whatever, and sleep is not accessible to you, then start with micro connections. Micro connections is when you spend just a few seconds looking at another human being in the eyes and trying to feel their emotion with them, no matter what that emotion is. The fact that you both are connecting and you are vibrating together provides your body a mini rest. It provides your heart a mini tune-up. And usually, even if that other person was sad, it will boost your mood because you will feel like you were helpful to another human being. So that is the simplest, easiest tip that takes the least amount of time, that is the least threatening, that doesn't demand preparation or skills. It's the smallest thing that you can do to start vibrating your body in the right direction. And you're going to feel good about that micro connection. And then you can use that energy and put it into your next healthy move.
I love that. A mini tune-up for your heart.
Yes.
Haley, I'd love for you to take it, give us your take on this, please.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for mentioning too, MJ, about that piece where sometimes we just don't always get sleep. And like Darren said, it's normal. Sometimes we have bad sleeps. It's when it turns into something really consistent. Something to consider is acceptance, because sometimes when we're focusing on something, which in this case is I'm not sleeping, you start counting the number of hours you're sleeping each night. Every morning you're waking up in the morning, or in the middle of the night, you're waking up and going, oh, I've only had 4 hours sleep, or I've only had 2 hours or 6 hours. And so what you're then focusing on is what you're not getting and this lack of sleep. When another kind of route to take is to look at, okay, let's look at this differently. What is sleep bringing me? What is the feeling that I actually want to attain? Is it the sleep itself, or is it the feeling of peacefulness and restfulness and clarity of mind? And so switching gears and start choosing in favor of things that will support that, those things that make you feel peaceful or are helpful to your mind, body, and soul, are then in turn that you have control over. And that when you're feeling good about something and you're supporting yourself, then your stamina increases, your energy increases, everything starts to feel better. And just maybe that will also help your sleep as a bonus side effect. But either way, you're focusing on what you do want.
Very true.
I love it. I love it. Darren, bring us home.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give you one simple thing to increase stamina. And we talk about stamina in multiple areas, but I think pick one thing a day and challenge yourself. One thing that makes you slightly uncomfortable, and do that. And that can be anywhere from like, hey, I don't really like reading. Okay, find something you enjoy to read read and just read for 5 minutes. Or I'm not a big public speaker. Well, go take a mini course in public speaking or talk in front of you, right? Like just find one thing a day. If it's sleep, like I want to challenge myself to sleep. We've talked about some sleep hygiene habits. One thing, simple, and then build on it. But don't get so overwhelmed with all of these things. Like just reward yourself for doing one thing that made you slightly uncomfortable.
Fantastic. I'm going to shift gears just a little before we go into the Q&A. That's such great information. Thank you. And thank you for all the engagement in the chat too. I'm going to take a moment to share my screen. Give me a moment and I will do that. I'm going to see my screen. I'm going to do a slideshow here for you. Okay. Slideshow from the beginning. Bear with me for one moment here as it comes up. Here we go. So we have another event that's going to be just as amazing as this one has been so far, and we still have another about 30 minutes to go with Q&A. And here's what my invitation is for you. The next one is going to be talking about living pain-free, holistic approaches to overcoming chronic inflammation. My whole goal with Mind Myself is to bring you information and practitioners who can help you, who can expand on the things that we think we know and take us a little bit deeper. So we're going to cover some of those different things. Why do we have so many issues with chronic pain and inflammation, and what can we do about it? So it's 6 weeks from today. And if you register today, you're going to get it for free. This is an invitation, not a pitch. And you'll be entering your name into a draw for 3 amazing things. A 30-minute online consult with Darren, we've met today. And none of them wanted to give me prices, so we're just going to say it's priceless. You've heard some of them talk today, and you know how deep you can go. So you get your name in a draw for a 30-minute consult with Darren. You get your name in a draw for a 30-minute online consult with Haley, and I've experienced both of those practitioners' work, and it's awesome. And you get a 30-minute consult with MJ, and I'm sure she will have amazing things to share with you, all for free. What we're trying to do with Mind Myself is gather momentum and share all of this with the world. So what I would ask you in return is to stay engaged with us. Tell 5 people in your life about Mind Myself, get them to go visit the website, or get them to sign up for the next event. And you'll see the sign up page in the chat. The practitioners have not been confirmed yet, but I'm working on it. We're going to have a naturopath. We're going to have a live blood analysis person, and we're going to have probably 2 naturopaths, and one of them is, I'm hoping, it will be Anita, because she's also a functional medicine practitioner. So the ways to stay engaged with us, I've already given you that. We want to do momentum. Please donate. Take a moment. I know you've got your credit cards out, some of you. I'm not asking for that today. Donate to your favorite organization, or Blind Beginnings is a local charity that helps blind children throughout the province of BC learn some life skills so they can be more independent. And the other one, I've just met a woman recently from Uganda, and it's called the Vase of Transformation. And she helps young girls from the ages of 9 to 18 have information and products about their periods because they have none. There's so much information that I learned. I was so inspired. The girls don't have what we take for granted, and they can't go into a store and buy it. And so I'm looking for donations for her, either in product or in money. And you can just go to that link anytime you want, find out more about the program. So I won't belabor that, but the girls are using plastic or rags or newspapers, or they're digging a hole in the ground, or they don't come to school. There's just so much great about that organization. Come to our next, sign up for our next one, visit Mind Myself, subscribe to our monthly Mindful Moment, or join the Mindful community. So that's all I have for you today about that. I would love for you to stay engaged, and I'm going to just stop this and stop my screen share wherever it went to. There it is, and I will be back. So now we are going to open this up to the Q&A. And I didn't have time to read all the chat because I was directing this, but there's been some awesome stuff in this. And if you, as a participant, have a question, just raise your electronic hand, just go down to the reactions part and raise your hand and ask your question. And as you're doing this, somebody who registered for this event and couldn't come asked a really cool question. She said, do naps compensate for being a night